$27 billion. 5 years delayed to be inaugurated. This is the Baltic King, the most expensive delayed railway project in Europe. And NATO, well, it's desperate for it to work. Because these train tracks could determine who lives and who dies in a war in Eastern Europe. But while NATO spent decades discussing this, a small country decided to do something that no military alliance has dared to do in the last 30 years. I'm talking about Estonia. In 2016, military simulations revealed that the capitals of 2 NATO countries, including Estonia's, could fall in 60 hours. 60 hours. That's not much. There's no time for reinforcements to arrive. And NATO? Well, it took them 6 years to officially change their strategy, 6 years of meetings, approvals, and bureaucratic processes. Estonia didn't want to just stand by and watch all of this happen. They realized that when you're 60 hours away from a disaster, every day matters. In this video, you'll find out exactly what Estonia is. A country smaller than many capitals around the world is making a stand on the most dangerous border in Europe. And why are they going far beyond what any NATO country has ever dared to do? To begin with, I need to tell you, why is Estonia taking such drastic measures? Look, between 1940 and the late 1980s, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania existed as republics of the Soviet Union. But unlike other Soviet territories, these countries maintained distinct national identities. Their languages, cultures, and independence dreams never fully vanished. When they finally managed to break free in the early 1990s, these countries made a choice that would forever change their relationship with Russia. Instead of trying to maintain good relations with Moscow, they rushed to the West. In 2004, all 3 joined NATO and the European Union. And here's something surprising. Vladimir Putin, who was already president when this happened. Initially, he didn't care much. In 2001, when asked about the Baltic countries joining NATO, Putin said that Russia couldn't forbid people from making certain choices if they wanted to increase the security of their nations. But in 2003, something changed drastically. For Russia, the Rose Revolution in Georgia was the turning point. In 2003, popular demonstrations overthrew Georgia's corrupt government and brought to power Mikhail Saakashvili, a young pro-Western leader. It was a peaceful revolution, but it steered the country completely toward the United States and Europe. Putin began to see these democratic movements not as expressions of popular will, but as Western operations to undermine Russian influence. From that moment on, the expansion of democracy and NATO to the east came to be seen by Putin as a direct threat to his own regime. Then we get to 2014, Russia's annexation of Crimea changed everything. For the Baltic countries, that was a red alert. If Putin was willing to invade and annex Ukrainian territory, what would stop him from doing the same to them? But you know what? The real shock came 2 years later. In 2016, NATO conducted war games to test its ability to defend the Baltic countries. The results were terrifying. Simulations by the RAND Corporation showed that Russian forces could reach Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, and Riga, the capital of Latvia, in just 60 hours. Think about that for a moment. NATO's Article 5, which guarantees that all members will defend any ally that is attacked, would become useless if those allies were defeated before help could arrive. And there's a geographical problem that makes everything even worse. It's called the Suwalki Gap. This is a land corridor of only 60 kilometers between Poland and Lithuania. It's the only land connection between the Baltic countries and the rest of Europe. On one side is Kaliningrad, a heavily militarized Russian territory. On the other side is Belarus, which today is practically a puppet state of Russia. The Russian strategy would be simple and brutal. Advance quickly through the Baltic countries, cut off the Suwalki corridor, and force a change of government before NATO could mobilize its armies. But something happened that completely changed that equation. The entry of Finland and Sweden into NATO in 2023 and 2024 effectively turned the Baltic Sea into a NATO lake. Now, reinforcements and air and naval support can reach the Baltic countries from the north and the west through the sea. This does not eliminate the importance of the Suwalki corridor, but now there are alternative routes to send reinforcements that did not exist before. Then came the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. For the Baltic countries, that was essentially a preview of what could be coming for them. But the war in Ukraine also revealed something fundamental. The Russian army was not the unstoppable force that NATO planners feared. The same forces that were supposedly going to capture Baltic capitals in days fought for months to take Ukrainian cities. And yet, this came with an even more terrifying realization. Putin showed he was willing to wage a brutal and genocidal war against Ukraine, a country he claimed was a brother to the Russians. For the Baltics, the implication was clear. If Russia was willing to devastate Ukraine, it would be even more willing to do the same to them. At the same time, the Ukrainian resistance demonstrated the immense value of prepared defenses. Trenches, minefields, and fortified positions proved to be extraordinarily effective at stopping and wearing down Russian offensives. Grenade. P-U-T-I-N. That's when the idea of the Baltic Defense Line was born, officially announced in January 2024, during a meeting between the defense ministers of Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania in Riga. But here's what a lot of people don't understand about this project. It's not a wall to stop the Russians, it's a trap to shape how they attack. The former commander of the Estonian Defense Forces, General Martin Heron, explains it like this. The strategy is not to block the invasion, but to shape it. The fortifications are built to be clearly visible. The goal is to force an invading commander to make difficult decisions, either attack heavily defended positions, suffering casualties and significant delays, or bypass them. Bypassing the fortifications extends supply lines, exposes the flanks to counterattacks, and channels the attacking forces into predetermined kill zones, where they can be targeted by artillery and long-range missiles. Ukraine had left a hard lesson. Even small delays and complications can have devastating effects. Russia's initial assumption that it could capture Kyiv in days was destroyed by the Ukrainian resistance, which forced Russian forces into costly urban combat and stretched supply lines. And in that sense, the Baltic Defense Line was designed precisely to systematically create these complications. By turning a 60-hour invasion into 60 days, it fundamentally changes the strategic calculation. But after all, What exactly is being built? Estonia plans 600 reinforced concrete bunkers each with 35 square meters, designed to house a platoon of 10 soldiers and withstand artillery attacks. Construction began in June 2025 with the excavation of anti-tank trenches, approximately 4 meters wide and 2 to 3 meters deep. Latvia began construction in May 2024, focusing more on anti-mobility obstacles. Their plan includes converting existing drainage ditches into anti-tank trenches, reinforcing them with concrete blocks called Dragon's Teeth. Latvia is creating 27 counter-mobility parks at strategic locations, where obstacles will be stored for rapid deployment in case of a crisis. But Latvia's most controversial investment is in anti-tank mine systems, over 800 million euros. And here we come to one of the most controversial decisions. In March 2025, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland announced their withdrawal from the Ottawa Treaty, an international agreement that bans the use of anti-personnel mines. Anti-personnel mines are explosives buried in the ground that explode when someone steps on them. They were banned because they keep killing civilians even after the war is over. But these countries have decided that, with the growing Russian threat, they need to use all available weapons to defend themselves. But this line of defense isn't made up of just bunkers and trenches. The Baltic countries are also buying modern and expensive weapons. To complement the fortifications, all three countries are acquiring the IMARS rocket system, which has proven decisive in Ukraine. Estonia and Latvia are jointly purchasing the German infrared imaging system, tail thrust vector-controlled air defense system, and there is strong investment in drones and anti-drone systems. But perhaps the most impressive aspect is how this is transforming Baltic societies. Estonia maintains compulsory military service and wants half of all men born in a given year to serve in the military. The Estonian Defense League, a volunteer organization, has more than 29,000 active members integrated into the territorial defense structure. The government also created a campaign and an app called Ol Valmis, which means be prepared. They provide all citizens with detailed instructions on how to act in crises, from power outages to evacuations. Latvia reintroduced mandatory military service in 2022, starting from September 2024. A national defense education course has become mandatory in all secondary schools. Lithuania reintroduced mandatory military service in 2015 and has a strong focus on civil resistance. The government distributes detailed guides that instruct the population on how to prepare emergency kits and what to do in case of an invasion. But there's a rather delicate problem here. Estonia has many residents of Russian origin, and they live precisely in the border regions, where the line of defense is being built. In Ida-Viru County, there are more than 3 Russians for every Estonian. In the border city of Narva, 90% of the population speaks Russian. A 2024 survey revealed a worrying divide. When asked if they would allow the government to use their private property to build bunkers and fortifications, 67% of ethnic Estonians said yes. But among residents of Russian origin, only 38% would agree to give up their land. This means that almost 2/3 of ethnic Russians do not want to help build defenses against Russia. And here arises the biggest challenge: time. Western intelligence agencies estimate that Russia could rebuild its military forces and be ready to threaten NATO within 3 to 5 years. But estimates for the completion of the Baltic defense line reach up to a decade. The cost is astronomical. Estonia plans to spend 5.4% of its gross domestic product on defense, more than double the NATO target average. Lithuania is investing more than 800 million euros just in mines. These are impressive numbers for countries with populations smaller than many Brazilian cities. The question that remains is, will all of this work? Estonia's strategy represents a bold bet that small countries can deter larger powers through strategic intelligence rather than brute force. It's a hedgehog-style model. In other words, making the cost of aggression higher than any potential benefit. If it works, other small countries around the world might copy this strategy to protect themselves. And strategy. As you can see, Estonia is not just waiting for NATO to ensure its survival. While the alliance processes changes and discusses strategies, a country smaller than many cities around the world is building the future of modern defense, bunker by bunker, on Europe's most tense border. And Putin is paying attention. And what do you think? Do you believe Estonia's strategy will work against Russia? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with anyone else interested in geopolitics. See you next time.